From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lanny. Let's start shopping.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rant. Another emergency podcast, another enormous night for the men's basketball team. I'm here with Fonseca. Pat Lanny is at wrestling practice today. We got to talk hoops. We got to talk about, and I get it, Brian. We've done this a million times now, but it's almost like the latest, biggest win of the Steve Pikiell era. And I mean, as great as it was, Ron Harper's half-court shot to beat Purdue at home last year when they were number one, I just think this is a bigger win, 65-64 at Mackey Arena, the toughest place arguably to play in the Big Ten, against arguably the best player in college basketball. I mean, it's just another one of these program building victories, and to lead 10 points at half against that team, to hold on after you lose the lead. There are so many things that impress me about this.
Absolutely. And I think beyond even asking if I think it's indisputably the greatest regular season win under Steve Pikiell, and there's been many in that bunch. I think we're talking about, is this the greatest regular season win in program history? Is this the greatest regular season win in Rutgers athletics history? Because of all the factors you said. And I do think that you mentioned that Mackey Arena is the toughest place to play in the Big Ten. I think it's pretty widely regarded. I think Rutgers didn't like that talk. I think they think the RAC is Jersey Mike's Arena is a better venue, and they kind of wanted to prove that, you know, they can they can win at Mackey. Rutgers, listen to this. Rutgers has won twice in the last 3 times they went to Mackey Arena. That is unbelievable. Rutgers is 2-1 at Mackey Arena. Purdue is 18-21 at Mackey Arena in that span. So
That's
Rutgers
really
has beaten Purdue at Mackey Arena more times than any team in the last 2 years.
Wow. Guys.
And yes, this is a Purdue team that is as good as advertised. I mean, Zach Edey is a monster, an absolute monster. We can start there. The fact Rutgers got a bit of a break early on. At the first possession, they go to Cliff Omori, as they always do. Zach Edey picks up his first foul immediately, which conditioned the entire first half. It means that he's sitting for 9 minutes, I believe he sat for, which makes a huge difference in that he's not on the floor. It changes the dynamic. And Rutgers really took advantage and built that 10-point lead. But before getting to the nitty-gritty, the big picture thing, it changes the complexion of the season. It's further proof of the program that Pikiell has built. And yeah, I mean, where would you rank this? Sorry, I'm all over the place, but it's, you know, where would you rank this among Rutgers wins ever?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of top 5. It's got to be up there, no question. And big picture, what it says for me, and it's funny, like we should stop being shocked at this, I think is the takeaway. Purdue's not shocked about this. The Big Ten's not shocked about this. Matt Painter, his first team all quote. I loved his quote that you put on your story this morning. What Rutgers did tonight did not shock the coaching staff. We sold it like, hey man, these guys are coming. If we were going to war, we'd stop by New Jersey and pick them up. Them cats, they play for keeps. It's just a great quote. It sums up, you know, like this is the identity of this program now. This is one of the tougher teams in the Big Ten to play on any night. And yeah, okay, they're not perfect every night. We saw it against Seton Hall. They have off nights like any team does, but you know, this is the identity of Rutgers basketball. You're going to have to punch them in the face and rip the ball away from them to win the game. And I just think there's this photo that's been circulating where, you know, there's a Purdue guard and he's trying to save the ball. And there are like 4 Rutgers players surrounding him, like just with like rage and intensity on their faces. It just sums the whole thing up. The defense is as good as, and Steve Pikiell has said this, and I totally agree, it's the best defensive team he's ever had. I mean, yeah, and to your point, it changes what this, it gives you now, all right, well, let's stop talking about if they make the NCAA tournament. Let's talk about what the ceiling for this team is. I mean, they're number 16 in the net. NCAAs no longer feel like a question. I mean, should we raise expectations of what this team should do?
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote that they can contend for the Big Ten title because I think the talk around the league has been that Purdue was head and shoulders above a pretty wishy-washy group otherwise, and Rutgers just went into their place and beat them, right? And to your point, I think someone on the Field of 68, their post-game rap show, said that defense travels. Rutgers defense travels. Playing at this level, this is their best defense. I think that's undisputed now. I was in between whether the 1920 season, which finished ranked 6th nationally, was better or not. I think it's undisputed that this team is better because they just held Purdue to 64 points when their best 2 defenders, Moat Mag and Caleb McConnell, were out for 21 of the 40 possible minutes in the first half with foul trouble, and they still did that to Purdue. So, yes, with that defense, they can go to any place in the Big Ten, and especially at Mackey Arena, and clamp down on teams. And if they play well enough offensively, they can beat anybody. And this is going to be even more crucial in the postseason, in the Big Ten tournament, and the NCAA tournament to make a run, because if you could play like this, it's always dependable. You're not worried about our shots going to go in or shots not going to go in. That was kind of Purdue's issue in the NCAA tournament last year when their offense dried up a bit. I don't think Rutgers' defense is going to dry up unless a ref show happens and they get called for 50 fouls, which I think you and I disagree a little bit about last night.
Within the realm of possibility, based on what we saw last night.
Well, luckily for them, they're not going to play at Mackey Arena or in a Big Ten road venue in the NCAA tournament. But look, that's the cost of playing football on a basketball court. They're borderline punching people in the face. I thought the refs were going to give them sparring outfits at halftime to relieve some of this. They look like a UFC fight in there. So that's what happens. You're going to get called for a ton of fouls. But I think that obviously, I think it's pretty clear that the pros of playing that level of defense vastly outweigh the cons.
I agree. I'm not one of these holy crap, the officiating guys. I think I can establish that my track record on that. Last night, though, I mean, there were a few of them. There was one time Caleb McConnell's defending on the perimeter, and it looked like on the replay that the Purdue player stepped on his foot and fell over. that was called a foul. It was called a block against them. There's just a couple of moments where Edey inside. I mean, Cam Spencer, I thought it was going to explode, stole the ball from him. I didn't see contact. If there was contact, there certainly wasn't a lot of contact. 24-11. I really thought that's how the game was going to end. After Cam Spencer hits that incredible shot, I was convinced, all right, well, Purdue's going to have a chance to win this at the line. It was a miracle that didn't happen. Of course, then there still was a controversy at the end, and I don't know, what was your take on so many things at the end of the game happened, but this could have been a different outcome if they were 1.4 seconds on the clock instead of 0.4 seconds on the clock with the inbounds play. I mean, that was, my goodness.
Yeah, my understanding is that the rule was properly called this time. You're only allowed a 3-foot, I think, cylinder around when you are inbounding on the baseline. And Caleb, I think I watched the replay in depth, but it looked like he clearly violated the rule, and it was a good call.
Oh, I agree totally. Well, why weren't they coming back to the ball? I mean, what was the call? It was just sort of a bizarre moment where like, all right, he's got the ball. They've got no timeouts. They got to get the ball in. Where is everybody? It was just weird.
Yeah, like you said, it was an insane finish and scramble and all that. I will say, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to go on a bit of a side rant. I've seen a lot of Rutgers fans say that Rutgers is technically 3-0 in the Big Ten because the Big Ten acknowledged that Rutgers beat Ohio State. That is not what happened. The Big Ten acknowledged that they made a mistake on the final play and their game-winning shot should not have counted. You're going to say, is that not the same thing? It's not.
Say the same thing.
It's not. It's not.
It didn't
because
say the same thing? Okay.
if they did call that, right, Ohio State would have time on the clock. Rutgers would be inbounding the ball, but there would still be time on the clock. We saw last night clearly what could have possibly happened. Ohio State could have gotten the ball back, and they could have gotten another chance, and they could have scored. Is that likely? Obviously not.
Right.
My point being, Rutgers did not beat Ohio State.
They did not.
They did not.
But if that is called, there is a better chance than not that they're 3-0. That is true.
No,
and if they're 3-0 in the Big Ten, they would be 3-0 in the Big Ten with wins at 2 of the hardest road venues and a win over the preseason favorite. I mean, they'd be in the driver's seat. They would be the team to beat. They might still be the team, but if they had won that game, they would be the team to beat in the Big Ten.
You fell right into my next point, which is that if they had beaten Ohio State, we have no idea if they would have won at Mackey Arena, because winning at Ohio State completely changes. One, it changes the next game, right? We assume that they would have beaten Seton Hall 3 days later. We assume that they would have, dominated the next 2 opponents. We assume they would have won at Mackey Arena. We don't know that. We don't know what a win Ohio State does to their psyche. We don't know if they have the chip on their shoulder last night. my point being that there is no use in going to hypotheticals and trying to relitigate the past. The point is that Rutgers is 2-1 in the Big Ten, 2-1 in the Big Ten with a win at Mackey Arena, a near win over maybe the best offense in the Big Ten, and they're legitimately good. Rutgers is legitimately good. Their program, and we should not be as surprised as we are. I agree with you that this was less dramatic of a win and less surprising of a win. Just because the national reaction was really muted. I thought like Rutgers just beat the number one team in the country, and I did not see much.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about this later, but I think part of the national reaction was as it was happening, one of the worst moments in recent sports history was unfolding on Monday Night Football. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that I think that did subdue a lot of how people would have been watching the end of that game. Certainly, a lot of TVs were not turned to the game. Again, we'll discuss that in a minute. But yeah, I mean, I think what it will do in the short term is college basketball people will now have Rutgers on its radar. Can't give it right back, I guess is the key thing here. You know, you got Maryland coming into the rack now. The Terps have kind of fallen down a little bit under Kevin Willard lately. You would think that would be a game Rutgers should win. You got Iowa coming to the rack. That's again another tough opponent, clearly, but at home, a game you should win. Then you're at Northwestern. I mean, there's like, you look at it now, like, okay, well, this just could build. They could build on this pretty quickly. Absolutely.
I do think it's worth noting. I think it was Danny Breslauer who was maybe the smartest Rutgers basketball fan in the discourse in the Rutgers basketball discussion space. And I don't say that because we know Danny. I say that because I mean it. He points out a very good point that Rutgers has gotten some 3-point luck, some luck at the free throw line. I think Purdue missed. I don't know how many they missed, but they missed a ton of them. They took a lot of them, but they missed a ton of them. And they obviously are not a great 3-point shooting team. They missed a lot. Rutgers is due for some team to come into Jersey Mike's Arena and shoot 50% on threes and, you know, dumb luck their way into a win. It's just it's going to happen. It's a matter of withstanding that. They were able to do that against Wake Forest, which shot 50% on threes. Being able to withstand that and being able to take the one, you know, they're going to have one or two head scratching losses. As long as it's not to Minnesota, then they're fine, essentially.
The way to withstand that is to do what happened last night, and it's Cam Spencer. And I think that was one of the two important things that come out of there from basketball standpoint was that we know who's going to take the last shot now. I think that's obvious. Cam Spencer wanted the ball. I mean, John Newman, the second smartest Rutgers fan, had texted me during the game, Spencer for the win here. And sure enough, he hits the 3-pointer. I think that was obvious the ball was going to him. And, there's reason to believe now they've got that guy. He might, he hasn't proven it to the level yet, but, that was really encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. And he had a very Ron Harper-esque way of going about that last shot. Apparently he told teammates and coaches in the huddle that I'm making the shot, I'm hitting the shot. And Pico called him a very confident kid. I wrote a story about him going into the season, talked to a lot of people around him. And I think it's not fake confidence. It's very real confidence based on the work he puts in. He's the first guy on the court shooting around before every game. He's maniacal in shooting, and it paid off there. Even to the point where Purdue knew it was coming. They defended it well. And Paul Mulcahy, who we could also talk about, had a great stretch at the end of the game, took over, really assumed the leadership role that Rutgers needs him to at the end of that game. He managed to find Cam anyway. Cam has a great move with the pump fake to open it up, hits the shot. And I think you're not entirely wrong that he hasn't fully done the Big Ten thing, but I mean, he's shooting 44% on threes in the Big Ten. He was great last night, 6 of 8 shooting, hit the big shot, timely shots, didn't force anything. I think Rutgers got a real gem out of him in the transfer portal, and he's the guy that may not be as outspoken as Ron Harper Jr. I think he's clearly got the dog in him to kind of, for lack of a better term, but I think Rutgers has found him as the shooter, and they found two real leaders in Caleb McConnell and Paul Mulcahy, who in big moments last night, Paul Mulcahy in the first half when things got a little rough and there was that technical foul on Caleb McConnell and Derek Simpson was getting a little heated because he didn't think that foul call was fair. Paul Mulcahy grabs the guys, huddles them around, doesn't let them get emotional. And then at the end of the game, 6 huge points. And it really turns what could have been a collapse. Rutgers blows a 13-point lead, starts losing with 4 minutes to go into a headstrong, great finish, and one of the greatest wins in Rutgers history.
Yep. And they recognized Steve Peichel, give him credit. He recognized, all right, the ball's got to be in Paul's hands. And that was totally the right thing. I mean, offensively, this team is still a work in progress. I don't think that there's any question about that. But when you see those flashes, and again, you see Derek Simpson, getting to the basket and hitting a big three, and Hyatt can hit a big three when he needs to. There's a lot of good things that are happening on that end too. So hey, look, we're obviously you beat number one team in the country. People start gushing. You get to number 16 in the net. It's going to be that way. You're right about that. There is a night coming where people's going to like, well, how do you beat Purdue on the road and you lose to Iowa? No, well, that's going to be just part of basketball. But just a really promising win, and all arrows pointing up, to say the least.
Do you think Rutgers is a legitimate Big Ten contender from your point of view?
Yeah, I do, because I haven't seen sorry, they played the better. I haven't seen a better team yet, and I'm, you're looking at the standings right now. The two only undefeated teams in the league are Michigan, which is 8-5. Like people in the Michigan are like, what's wrong with our basketball team? I get it. They're 2-0 in the Big Ten, and Wisconsin, which lost at home to Wake Forest. Like, I don't think people expected Wisconsin to be like good in the Big Ten this year. So totally. Yeah. I haven't seen a better team. And I think, I still think Purdue's probably going to be the team to win it, but after from 2 to 13, I don't have a really good idea where these teams are going to finish out. So totally, they can win it. You do you disagree?
I completely agree. I think I don't think it's fair to expect them to win it. I don't think they're at that point yet. I do certainly think that they have a chance for sure. I think for the reasons we've discussed. A half-baked take I have here is Rutgers sort of like the defensive version of Purdue, in the sense that Purdue dominates offensively and is not as great defensively. Rutgers dominates defensively, has an identity on that side of the floor. They have they recruit similarly in that they don't really get these superstar players, but they recruit players that fit to the system. They are a bit understated nationally. I don't know. Again, this is a half-baked take I had while I was falling asleep last night. But, I mean, do you see similarities between the programs there?
They don't get the superstar players yet, Brian. We'll talk about that in a minute too. No, totally. I think that's it. And that's, that's the thing this program had lacked before Steve Peichel got here. And this is it. The way they play defense is their identity. They're built that way. They've got the best defensive player in the Big Ten. And now, the way he's made that team with those long guys on the perimeter. I mean, Mulcahy, Hyatt, there's so much length. I mean, Cliff up front, he was very good defensively. Yeah, I think that this is no question that is what will keep them in games. And there aren't. The flip side of that is there really aren't a lot of elite offensive teams in college basketball. I get it. There are a few, not many, not in the Big Ten, but and so I think this defense is going to keep them in every game this year. There's no question about it.
Absolutely.
All right. What do you want to do first? You want to take some insider questions, or you want to talk some football? We can do both at the same time if you want to do that. Let's do it. Because this is funny. So I put out, if you're not on our texting service, you should be. And that way, when I texted out they were having a podcast, I asked for questions, and I said, look, just to head it off at the pass here, just to make sure you're aware, we do not know who the offensive coordinator is yet for football, and we do not know it's taking so long. And so keep that in mind when you ask your questions. And the first question, you know what the first question is? Hey, Steve, any word on the OC? I love you guys. You guys are awesome. And the second one was, any truth to the rumor that Peichel will take the OC duty, which is great. So
it's a good joke. Last night,
two good jokes.
Last night, I don't remember exactly the timing. I think it was like at halftime. Someone texted us or tweeted at me, "Hey Brian, off topic. Any update on the OC search?"
I think we get like one a day, and it's like, if we had an update, we know how much you guys want to know who it is. We wouldn't hold on to it. I think we'd get it out there pretty quickly. Yeah,
I want to tweet at people the old Adam Zagoria, Josh Newman line of, I actually have 1,000 words ready on who it is, and I know who it is. I just was waiting for someone to ask me to do it. Do you want me to do it now? Is that what you want?
Oh, you guys want to know who the ace? Oh, I had no idea. Yeah.
But my worry is that if I do tweet that out, people are going to take it seriously and be like, yes, tell me. And then I'd have to explain the joke. So,
yeah. So just to, we've speculated talking about this again. There's no one, and this is one of the fun. People should have known when I started really going hard that Greg Schiano should be the head coach of this program, that I really meant it, because of this is the flip side of having Greg Schiano the head coach of this program, is that information is he keeps a tight lid on this stuff. I don't know that he takes counsel in a lot of people when he does this. So we've had a lot of names that we have thought from Greg Schiano's past, from that makes sense, that we've asked about, and there's no sign that those are the guys. There's a couple in the NFL. Well, maybe they're the guys. That to me is still the most logical reason. Like someone said, well, maybe now the bowl games are over. Well, I think coaches move all the time during bowl season. That's not a holdback for guys to leave. NFL makes sense, but it would not surprise me tomorrow if we get the name and it's someone that none of us have heard. That to me would be totally on brand, or we just wasn't on the radar.
That's probably the most, that would make the most sense at this point, right? Because if it's any of the ones we've speculated for the past month, they would have been hired by now. Even in the NFL angle, Kentucky hired back their OC from a few years ago, who was the OC at the Rams in the first week of December. Yeah. And he's been coaching for the last month, right? And granted, the Rams season is over. They've been done for a while, but still, that has not precluded other teams from hiring sitting coaches in the past. That was kind of what Greg used as an explanation during his signing day press conference. But still,
NIL Now, a podcast dedicated to the name, image, and likeness of today's college and high school athletes.
NIL is not a cherry on top. It needs to be thought about as a part of these young men and women's future, as a nest egg for something when something goes wrong. There's less than 1% of these football players make it to the NFL. Their plan B is sometimes not as lofty as plan A. This NIL thing, when you ask what's the next important thing, is to make sure that these players are coming to school for education, sports, but also NIL is a close third in that. It's an investment into these players now that they can take advantage of or leverage their name, image, and likeness to, further their careers. So now you have a nest egg after you've invested so much time into your skill set in college. You should be able to leave college with something.
This is NIL Now.
I think everyone will be relieved when this is over. Us, fans, Greg himself. But yes, we have no update.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's been turned down a bunch. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the case, if a couple of his top candidates got better jobs, because let's face it, these guys who are taking an offensive coordinator job, they look at the salary and that matters, but they are upward climbing people. They're looking at how is this job going to get me my next job? How is this job going to make me a head coach? And let's frankly look what happened to the last guy who had it, got fired mid-season. And there's no sign really that this is going to be, a miracle worker OC is not going to turn this into a top 25 offense next year. So it's still a work in progress. It's still going to be a tough job for whoever takes it. And I think that's part of what's going on here, that, the candidate pool might not be as strong as people think it is based on solely the fact that they've been offering 7 figures to the previous guy. So, all right, we'll see what happens there soon. Maybe, perhaps, I don't know. Let's dive into some more questions. This is a good one. So, in year 6 and 7 of this miraculous rebuild, Steve Pikiell was knocked off the number 1 team in the nation. Basketball rankings are different and upsets are easy to come by. Well, what would the football equivalent be? Would it be knocking off Ohio State and Michigan in the same season? That's great. You make the texter made the point about it. Obviously, it's easier to win a basketball upset. I think if Rutgers upset Ohio State, it would just be by far more significant. Ohio State, as much criticism they're getting for pooping the bed against Georgia at the end, is 45-6 over the last, since Ryan Day became head coach. They do not lose often. They've only lost to Michigan in the Big Ten, so it's not like it's that's a attainable thing. I think it would be as big as going to Penn State on the road and winning there. Where would you put it?
Yes, I would agree. I think it's also the level of what these teams are operating in, right? The Rutgers basketball program at this point, winning at Purdue is not as shocking as it would have been if this happened 5 years ago.
Right.
So
exactly. Great point. This right now they're in a much different place. This is year 3 of Steve Peichel. That team does not. I mean, that team's better, but it just does not win at Purdue. That's a great point. Yeah.
Right. Like it would be like when in his first year they went to Breslin Center, almost beat Michigan State. Like that would be the equivalent, I think, of going to Penn State and winning there. The difference in the sports is just upsetting Ohio State at the shoe would be the greatest upset maybe in college football history, alongside Appalachian State at Michigan. They're in different realms. It's a different sport. I don't think it's fair to compare, really. I saw some people try to say if this win was more impressive than Louisville in 06. I think that's a pretty big stretch. I think that's still the biggest regular season win of any sport at Rutgers, maybe. But we're really comparing two things that aren't comparable, I think, in my view.
Yeah, good answer to that. Okay. A bunch of recruiting questions. So that's, of course, when you see something like that springs to mind for people, but it's also been in the news for Rutgers. So 24/7 is a crystal ball prediction for Dylan Harper going to Duke. Do we still think we have a good chance? How much does last night's win help us? I mean, look, everything I've heard about Dylan Harper is that he is Duke's number one target. And if you are Duke's number one target, you usually go to Duke. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And I think it's remarkable that Steve Peichel, I get it. He's got a great relationship with that family. Ron Harper loves him, loves Rutgers. It would be just a stunning turn of events to me for Dylan Harper to go to Rutgers. Am I wrong?
Yes, I think you are. I don't disagree with the way you're looking at this. I think you're going a bit too hard in that direction. I certainly still think I don't think anything has been done as far as a decision. I think the 247 guy, the crystal ball is a bit overplayed because this is a guy. Yes, he's on the Duke site. He's probably the second or third guy on that site. He, as many Rutgers fans have noted, he was a guy who predicted Cliff O'More would go to Arizona State a month before he picked Rutgers. If it's not Adam Finkelstein, if it's not any of the major 247 guys, if it's not one of the Rutgers guys or the main Duke guy, I would not take any of the crystal balls that seriously with Dylan. His mother and Ron have both gone on Twitter in the last week to say that it's going to be Dylan's decision and he'll decide when it's time. It doesn't sound like he's close to making a decision. I talked to someone close to him last week or a couple weeks ago. I went to watch him at Don Bosco, and it sounds like he's still going to play out the season and then decide. He's still going to take visits. I certainly think Rutgers is still in it. I think he's been at a few games. I would not be surprised to see him at a few more games. Steve Peichel and the entire staff are prioritizing him. If they land him, which I certainly think is possible, it would be a program shifting, Big Ten shifting move. This is a kid who is ranked top 10 nationally. He has an incredible upside. He is, from all accounts, has a chance to be better than his brother by a significant margin.
Oh yeah. Someone said to me, he's a young Magic Johnson. And I get it. That's hyperbole, but just a ball handling big man. You're like, okay, well, the way he plays, his size for a guard, it's just, yeah. So there's no question about that.
If he comes here, and we're jumping the gun, but that would be attraction to other top targets, guys like Ace Bailey, a 5-star forward out of Georgia, who Rutgers is recruiting hard and seems to be in a dogfight with Auburn. So beyond getting the players, what it would mean for the roster and everything, winning battles in recruiting against Duke, which is the most prestigious program in the sport, and Auburn, which has maybe the deepest pockets in college sports, or certainly up there, would be a huge, huge signal of really how far Rutgers has come in the view of recruits. And Rutgers would be Final Four contending good if they land those two kids.
I will say that wins like that certainly, yeah. I mean, it's not like Dylan Harper has to take a leap of faith like Ron did. I mean, he's going to a winning program. I mean, again though, it's just Duke. Duke is like the famous quote. Duke is Duke. It's just, I don't know. It's a tough one. But and to the point though about recruiting now, there's the other question with the new point guard committed to and the other player from Connecticut who's supposed to be committed. Is this going to be Peichel's best recruiting class? I mean, you wrote this the other day. I mean, tell me about the recruit they did get.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I'll kind of give you guys the back story on how all that happened. I'm sitting at at Jersey Mike's Arena, and there's two recruits behind the Rutgers bench. There's Bayan Dongo, a 2023 center from Colorado, who Rutgers hosted on an unofficial visit, and who is deciding soon, and Rutgers is trending well in his recruitment. And next to him is Delquan Warren. I went to go talk to Bay. I did not realize Daquan Warren is there. And then an hour later at halftime, I see his high school tweets out that he committed. And I'm like, okay, this is a high school jumping the gun. So I follow them. They follow me back. I DM them. I'm like, hey, is this legit? He's like, yeah. He just committed on Facebook. And they send me a link. And I'm like, there's no way a high school kid committed on Facebook. We follow each other. So I DM Daquan. I'm like, is this legitimate? He's like, yes. And then I run with it. And so I broke the news.
Amazing.
I broke the news because the kid is living in 2007.
Beautiful. He's Steve Pikiell's dream player, if that's the case. That the way you describe this, Pikiell must love him for that reason alone. 2
of the last 4 commits Rutgers has gotten are kids that don't go on social media, and Cam Spencer, and a kid who is posting on Facebook.
That's great. His MySpace page must have been down. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's a good point. Adding him is a great start to the class. This is a top 100 kid who, I mean, he's not to the level of Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, but if this wasn't a class where Rutgers is pursuing targets at that level, this would be a huge get in Rutgers fans' eyes. I saw some people worry that maybe that will affect Dylan Harper because he's a point guard. Dylan Harper's a bit of a combo guard. I don't see those two, being an issue at all. I think if anybody got in the way of Dylan Harper coming to Rutgers, they would not be accepted into the class. I think these are irrelevant to each other. I certainly think it probably helps even for Dylan.
It helps, no question. Yep.
To have a kid of that caliber, I don't think it's going to convince him entirely, but it certainly helps.
And then they get the recruit from Georgia, and I love this, because it's like a no star guy, completely off the radar. And I think at this point, our reaction to this, instead of being, who is this? Well, how's he getting this? Should be, oh, this guy must be really good, because that's what Steve Pikiell does, is he finds these guys like Gio Baker who are, and turns him into, we haven't talked a lot about that recruit either. And I'm sorry, I don't have his name in front of me.
Jamichael Davis.
Gotcha.
Speak for yourself. When I saw him committed out of nowhere, I thought he was a walk-on. I swear to God. I had to text people to confirm, is this legitimate? This could be another kid another under the radar kid that has no fanfare, that Mike Pikiell develops into a solid player. I mean, at worst though, he's a AAU teammate of Ace Bailey, the 5-star kid from Georgia, and they seem to be good friends. He was very excited about him committing to Rutgers. I certainly don't think it hurts in that recruitment either. But I don't think that is why Rutgers took his commitment. Rutgers had been recruiting him since the summer, very low key as they tend to do, and that is just an additional byproduct of that.
All right, a few more, and I think the takeaway is, though, worrying about Pikiell's recruiting is, that's a 2020 narrative that we can move on from. He's certainly those questions are being answered every day. He's in it with top players. He's getting top players. It's going to be fine. Is Rutgers officially a basketball school now? That was a question from a texter. You want to take that one?
I think it's a silly question, frankly. Just
you can be everything. You don't have to be at one or the other, right?
Yeah, and I don't think Rutgers is the only school in the country that does this, but I've been seeing a lot of the fan base kind of going at each other about
it's weird,
pinning the teams against each other, and I get it. Like, for some basketball only fans who had to eat manure for years when the program stunk it up while the football program was good, maybe they want to rub it in the football fans' faces. I think it's silly, and I think that Rutgers would be better if its fans supported all the programs equally and didn't try to bring each other down. I guess the answer to the question is no, they're not a basketball school yet. I think it takes more than this to become a basketball school. Kentucky football has been great for 3 years now, and that place will never stop being a basketball school. But the greater answer is it doesn't matter. It
doesn't matter. Mike in Maple Shade has a good one-liner, but it also, there's an element of truth to this as well. Place your bets now. You guys should guess how much Pikiell's next contract extension will be. It's funny, but it didn't dawn on me until I saw Mike's text. It's just another example. Like when Pat Hobbs gave Pikiell that extension last March, I thought to myself, God, was that really necessary? But yeah, I mean, maybe Pat Hobbs is good at his job in a lot of ways. I mean, that makes, now you look at it like, all right, if this season takes the trajectory that we think it's taking, now you've got Steve Pikiell will have Rutgers in 3, should have been 4 straight NCAA tournaments. Unprecedented. Rebuilding this program, he can win on the road against the number 1 team in the country, and he's now recruiting at a level where an AD who thought that was the one box he hadn't checked could look at it and go, oh, this guy's pretty good. So I mean, there's never been any hint that Steve Pikiell is going anywhere, but all right, score one for Pat Hobbs, a proactive strike here to keep his basketball coach away from other places.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing about that contract extension last year was the increased buyout. I don't necessarily think Steve Pikiell was in danger of leaving Rutgers ever, even with the success and some more interest that would surely come from it. I really don't think there's any danger outside of maybe UConn, if that ever opens up.
Which is not going to open up. Yeah, right. Yeah.
There's really no. Someone jokingly asked me if he might take the Knicks job in next year when Thibodeau gets fired. I don't think he'll ever go to the NBA. I don't think the NBA will want him either, frankly. I don't think there's any real danger of him leaving, and there's no reason for him to leave. He's building an elite program at a place that treats him like a god. Like, Rutgers fans will die for this man. Why would he want to leave this place? He probably. I would not be surprised if he gets another extension just because he's earned it so far. Assuming, again, like you said, that they follow the trajectory of where this season is going. And yeah, I think everyone at Rutgers would gladly pay for it if it came to that.
All right. A few more questions and a lot of texters didn't have a question, but had mentioned that they were doing what I think a lot of us were doing last night, watching that game at the end of the Rutgers game while trying to figure out what was happening in the Monday Night Football game. And, what happened, obviously, it became the biggest story in sports right now, biggest story in sports for the NFL season, without question. Damar Hamlin's just stunning injury, chilling injury, critical condition, CPR on the field, canceling Monday Night Football. And I think it certainly put me in where I was when I heard about the Eric LeGrand injury. I think it put a lot of Rutgers fans who were in MetLife Stadium in 2010 when he was hurt. And I talked to Eric about it, and he mentioned the same thing. Like, he had heard from his former teammates who were asking if he was okay, if he had seen it, who were concerned for him. And to his point, like, it's going to be really hard for the Bills and for the Bengals and for really the rest of the NFL to move on from this. I mean, everybody witnessed it. We were all part of that trauma, and certainly the ones who were teammates for him on that field who saw it, it's just going to be a really difficult thing for professional football. And, Eric has certainly a unique perspective on it. And he told me, he's like, well, I was the guy who was hurt. So I wasn't aware. Like, he was fighting for his life. He wasn't aware of what was happening. But he only found out later. Just that was the team for Rutgers. I mean, they never won another game again, and that it was just a devastating moment for that program. And I think it's going to be, those guys are changed forever. And I know you were in the same boat I was. I think were you even aware what was happening, Brian, when that went down?
I had no idea it was happening until you texted our group chat.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It was. I mean, I was barely watching the end of the Purdue game, to be honest with you, because I was running my gamer. But yeah, I thought you did a great job with the column on a sensitive subject, and it's. I don't know how people expected them to even get back on the field. I don't know how people expect to get them to get back on the field in 6 days.
I know.
Incredibly sad story. I don't think we know much about Hamlin's condition at this point, right?
It's still critical condition. I've seen that he was, intubated and the updates again, just, you don't want to speculate on it. And again, that's pretty much what happened on CNN. Just a lot of experts talking about what it had to be a cardiac episode. And that's about as scary as, again, that's what Eric said. Like, you think, all right, the risks, concussions, broken legs, even spinal cord, but that is just something that you don't think about as a football player. So obviously our thoughts are with him and the Bills, and hoping that this story has a happy ending, or at least one that's not as awful as what everyone feared last night. All right, let's end this on a funny note, positive note. CJ from Baskin Ridge, this is a great question. Since Matt Painter referred to going to war with Rutgers as an ally, what was the most important Revolutionary War battle fought in New Jersey? Good job, CJ. What's your favorite Revolutionary War battle? Fonseca, you got one for me?
Oh, there's just so many. I think you should start while I grab my thoughts and try to figure out.
Oh, you're just Googling it right now, aren't you? No, I'm not going to let you do that. Just like you could be looking up. Right now, you're probably looking up Mary Tyler Moore. This is what you did when this happened.
My hands are up.
You don't have a...
For the people, I will post a screenshot. My hands are up. I am not Googling. I just am genuinely curious. I want to hear yours first because I don't want,
I mean, it's got to be the Continental Army's desperate retreat from Fort Lee.
You stole mine. All right, whatever. I guess we can chop that one.
How about the crossing of the Delaware River? Would that get you? It was pretty significant.
That was my second choice.
Battle of Monmouth.
Overrated.
I Googled it, by the way, too, so don't feel bad. Great question, though. Very funny. All right. Anything else we got to cover? Lenny's at wrestling. It looks like there's a lot happened with wrestling. I'm not really sure what it was, but it seemed like they had a good event over the weekend.
I got to be honest. I did not keep up closely with the Midlands. It was the end of the year, and I was a bit busy getting ready for the celebrations. But going back to the war thing, because Steve Peichel mentioned it as a war as well. Wrote trench warfare over there in Mackey Arena. So Rutgers is, I think, undisputed the number one team you take into war in the Big Ten. I don't think anyone could really argue. Do you have a number two, and do you have a team that you would not take to war under any circumstance?
Oh, I'm not taking Indiana to war. I mean, good grief. You get into a tough bout. You're right there. You're in the trenches there. You look behind you, they're gone. No Indiana. There's no Indiana in war. I'm taking, this is an easy answer. And I can see him in the little hat. By the way, I want Steve Peichel I want Tom Izzo standing on the front of the boat with the little hat, with the flag and all that. Like he would be the guy. You pick him up. You would certainly take him in that program to war without question. That would be an easy choice.
I think that's not what I would have thought. That's a great answer. I would love if someone could Photoshop that little hat, as you called it, onto Tom Izzo's head, while he's screaming. And tweet at us.
I'm sure that little hat has a name, and right now we're getting an angry tweet about that. But
it's not a beret, is it?
No, it's not a beret. It's a French thing, right?
Yeah, and the French are not good at war, as we know. I think I would take Wisconsin and Greg Gard because they're tough and they're clearly very tactically sharp. They make the most out of what they have, and I don't know who we're fighting in a war. I don't know exactly what the kind of war it is, but I know that they would figure it out. So I think
want an identity. You want a guy on your side with good tactician in the war. Of course, that's a good point.
Yeah, and I don't think there are any refs in war, so that's a good sign for all these teams.
Rutgers would be the first team to foul out of a war. Good way. Tying a ribbon on the podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. The big win. We'll be back, I'm sure, soon enough to talk about the next big win. Rutgers basketball off to a great start here. Thanks. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.